Thinking about moving in 2026? Maybe you're chasing affordable housing, lower taxes, or just a fresh start. Sounds great. Until you realize that not all cheap cities are created equal. Some are cheaper for a reason that usually involves higher poverty, struggling economies, and challenges you won't see in the glossy relocation guides. In this video, we're counting down the top 10 poorest cities Americans are still moving to. Yes, people are relocating here in 2026 despite the warning signs. We'll dive into the facts, reveal the shocking numbers, and sprinkle in some sarcastic commentary for good measure. By the end, you'll know which cities to seriously reconsider before packing up your life. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any of our relocation guides for 2026. And stick around. I want you to comment at the end which of these cities shocked you the most. Your input could actually help others make smarter moving decisions next year. 1. Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, home of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and a poverty rate that'll rock your budget just as hard. On paper, it looks tempting. Affordable housing, plenty of space, and that Midwest charm everyone raves about. Tree-lined streets, old brick houses, and the occasional lake breeze, it all sounds like the perfect move. But before you pack your bags, let's talk reality. The median household income here hovers around $33,000. Yes, that's median, meaning half the people earn less. Poverty sits at roughly 30%, which is far above the national average. Poverty sits at roughly 30%, which is far above the national average. And while jobs exist, many are low-paying, temporary, or part-time gigs that hardly pay for rent and groceries. Crime can be hit or miss depending on the neighborhood. Some areas are vibrant, thriving, and safe, while others are, well, let's say you'll want to keep your wits about you. And if traffic, urban decay, or the occasional unexpected expense makes you sweat, welcome to Cleveland 2026. But it's not all doom and gloom. The city has culture, sports teams that stir local pride, a growing food scene, and neighborhoods full of history and character. You could spend weekends exploring museums, parks, or live music venues. Just don't forget, cheap houses don't pay the bills for you, and a bargain price tag doesn't magically fix economic challenges. So yes, Cleveland is affordable, charming, and has a Midwest heartbeat you can't ignore. But if you're relocating purely to save money, make sure your budget, expectations, and sense of adventure are all lined up, because reality here has a way of keeping things interesting. 2. Detroit, Michigan. Detroit, the so-called comeback city. Maybe one day it'll fully earn that title, but for 2026, it's more like a bargain-hunting adventure with a side of caution. On the surface, the city tempts you with unbelievably cheap housing. Homes priced so low, you might think the listing forgot a zero. You see those $10,000 fixer-uppers and suddenly start imagining hardwood floors, exposed brick, and a brand new start on a budget. But before you start packing up your life and practicing your "I moved to Detroit" speech, let's talk about the part most relocation videos skip. The poverty rate here hovers around 32%, one of the highest in the entire country, and the median household income sits at roughly $35,000. That means a huge portion of residents are barely making ends meet, and job opportunities, while improving, can still be inconsistent, competitive, or simply low-paying. Now, let's talk safety. Detroit's crime rates remain significantly above the national average, especially in certain neighborhoods where abandoned properties outnumber occupied ones. Some blocks are quiet and revitalizing beautifully, while others still feel like the city paused in the early 2000s and forgot to press play again. Moving here purely for cheap housing means signing up for a lifestyle that requires awareness, resilience, and a solid lock on your front door. And the infrastructure? Let's just say you might meet a pothole large enough to file its own census report. Streetlights that don't always light, public services that work, eventually, an urban decay that gives some neighborhoods a post-apocalyptic aesthetic, great for filmmakers, less great for families trying to settle down. But don't get me wrong, Detroit isn't just ruins and roadblocks. The city has a heartbeat, music, Motown history, a legendary car culture, sports teams that inspire fierce loyalty, and communities filled with warmth and grit. There are areas undergoing real revitalization, new businesses opening, murals on every corner, and a creative scene that refuses to die. Still, if your relocation plan is based solely on cheap homes, prepare for the full Detroit experience, stretching every dollar, learning which neighborhoods to avoid after dark, and navigating buildings that may or may not have tenants or roofs. So yes, Detroit has potential. It has culture. It has soul. But if you're moving here for affordability alone, make sure you're ready for the reality that comes with it, the beauty, the challenges, and the survival skills you never thought you'd need. 3. St. Louis, Missouri. Welcome to St. Louis, the city where the iconic Gateway Arch symbolizes opportunity, and the poverty rate symbolizes everything you need to think twice about before relocating in 2026. On paper, St. Louis looks like a budget-friendly dream. Affordable homes, cheap rent, and a cost of living that stays politely below the national average. But affordability is only a blessing when the trade-offs aren't trying to stress you out daily. Let's go straight to the numbers. St. Louis has a poverty rate hovering around 22%, and some neighborhoods go well beyond that. The median household income sits around $46,000, leaving many residents trying to stretch dollars in a city where job opportunities can feel like a game of musical chairs. Except half the chairs have already been taken away. And let's be honest, the crime rate? It's been famous for all the wrong reasons. You'll find blocks filled with stunning historic homes that could be a renovator's dream, sitting right next to properties that look like they're auditioning for a zombie movie. One street feels safe and suburban, the next feels like you should keep your car window rolled up and avoid eye contact with anyone making sudden movements. It's a city of contrasts. Charming parks, great food, and baseball tradition mixed with economic struggle, abandoned buildings, and neighborhoods that can shift from peaceful to unpredictable in 10 steps. And don't forget the infrastructure. Potholes? Everywhere. Public transportation? Let's just say it tries its best. Some parts of St. Louis look like they're rebuilding beautifully. Others look like they're still waiting for someone to approve the budget from 1998. But let's be fair. St. Louis has undeniable strengths. Rich culture, vibrant arts, tons of museums, passionate sports fans, and neighborhoods filled with people trying to uplift the community every day. The spirit is strong, even if some areas are struggling to keep up. So if you're thinking about relocating here just because Zillow showed you a house that costs less than a used Toyota, remember this: cheap housing is only the first chapter. The rest of the story includes economic hurdles, safety concerns, and a daily reminder that affordability always comes with context. St. Louis might be the right move if you're adventurous, resilient, and ready to navigate a city that's rebuilding in pockets, but still fighting its battles in others. Otherwise, maybe keep scrolling on the relocation list. 4. Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham, the city that gave America civil rights history, Southern charm, and barbecue that can make you question every life choice you've ever made. But in 2026, it also gives something else: poverty rates and economic struggles that might make you close Zillow and rethink your relocation plans real quick. At first glance, Birmingham looks like the perfect deal. Homes are shockingly affordable, rent is low, and the cost of living is one of the lowest in the entire country. Sounds perfect, right? Well, affordability is great until you realize why it's affordable. Birmingham's poverty rate sits at around 25%, with entire neighborhoods where the struggle is not just visible, it's loud, daily, and unavoidable. The median household income? Around $42,000, which means a lot of residents are grinding hard just to stay afloat. And let's talk about jobs. Yes, there are pockets of healthcare, education, and finance opportunities, but outside of those, the job market can feel like a scavenger hunt. You'll find something eventually, but you might have to squint, dig, or settle for less than what you're used to. In some areas, economic development looks promising. In others, it looks like the city forgot it had responsibilities. Safety? Well, let's put it this way. Birmingham consistently ranks high on lists you don't want to be on. Some neighborhoods are peaceful and family-friendly, while others require you to stay alert, keep your valuables close, and maybe invest in a camera or 3. It's a city where the vibes can shift fast depending on which street you turn onto. And the infrastructure? Think Southern charm meets occasional chaos. Beautiful old buildings? Yes. Crumbling sidewalks? Also yes. Public services that feel like they're running on 50% battery? Definitely. Birmingham is a patchwork, half revitalized, half waiting for a miracle investor. But don't get it twisted. The city has soul. Music, food, culture, and some of the friendliest people you'll ever meet. If you can navigate the poverty rates, uneven development, and safety concerns, there are parts of Birmingham that feel warm, community-based, and genuinely welcoming. Still, if you're moving here strictly for affordability, remember, low prices come with context. In Birmingham, that context includes economic strain, limited job mobility, and neighborhoods that can go from "aw, cute street" to "roll the windows up" in seconds. So yes, Birmingham can be a new start, especially if you're resilient, strategic, and don't mind a little character in your day-to-day environment. But if you were dreaming of an easy relocation, Birmingham might hand you a lesson before it hands you a discount. 5. Memphis, Tennessee, home of blues, barbecue, Beale Street, and a poverty rate that could make even the most budget-friendly mover pause and say, "Wait, hold on." On the surface, Memphis looks like a relocation jackpot in 2026. Cheap homes, low rent, and a cost of living that feels like the universe is giving you a discount for just showing up. But as always, affordability comes with fine print. And in Memphis, that fine print is bold, underlined, and highlighted. Let's start with the basics. Memphis has one of the highest poverty rates in the entire country, hovering around 25–27% depending on the neighborhood. The median household income sits at roughly $42,000, meaning thousands of families are working hard, hustling nonstop, and still fighting an uphill financial battle. Yes, it's cheap to live here, but many people are living cheap because they simply don't have another choice. Now, let's talk crime. Memphis has been fighting this battle for decades, and while some neighborhoods are stable and family-friendly, others rank high on national crime lists year after year. You'll see beautiful southern homes, tree-lined streets, and then, 2 minutes later, boarded-up properties and blocks that feel like they haven't seen real investment in years. It's a city of extremes. Heavy community pride on one side, deep economic struggle on the other. The job market? It's improving. Slowly, but not evenly. You've got pockets of opportunity in logistics, healthcare, and transportation, thanks to FedEx and a few major employers. But outside those sectors, finding stable, well-paying work can feel like trying to find a four-leaf clover in tall grass. Not impossible, just not common. And then there's the infrastructure, or what's left of it. Potholes big enough to swallow a tire, public transit that feels allergic to reliability, neighborhoods still waiting for revitalization plans that were announced 5 years ago. Memphis is full of potential, yes, but also full of reminders that potential alone doesn't pay the bills. But here's the thing. Memphis has heart. Big heart. It has music history that shaped the world, food that will ruin your diet plans permanently, and some of the strongest community bonds in the South. People here are proud, resilient, warm, and know how to make something out of nothing. You'll feel the culture the moment you land. Still, if you're considering relocating here because it's cheap, remember, cheap doesn't mean easy. Memphis offers affordability wrapped in economic struggle, a high crime index, and the kind of neighborhood unpredictability that keeps you alert at all times. So yes, move to Memphis if you're ready for grit, culture, and a city with a pulse. Just make sure you bring realistic expectations, and maybe a spare tire for those potholes. 6. Buffalo, New York. Buffalo, the city of wings, snowstorms, and surprisingly low housing costs that make budget-conscious movers go, "Wait, New York has places I can actually afford?" Yes, it does. But before you get excited about moving to a cheap New York, let's talk about why it's cheap. Because Buffalo's affordability comes with enough fine print to fill a whole PDF. First off, the poverty rate sits at around 28–30%, one of the highest in the state, and far above the national average. The median household income? Roughly $43,000, which means a huge portion of residents are living on tight budgets while juggling rising utility costs, old housing stock, and weather patterns that show absolutely no mercy. And that housing stock? Oh yes, it's affordable, but many of those cheap homes come with surprises, aging infrastructure, expensive repairs, and heating bills in the winter that can make your bank account cry. And speaking of winter, Buffalo doesn't just get cold, Buffalo gets buried. You're not just dealing with snow, you're dealing with snow that comes with personality. The kind that shows up uninvited, stays for months, blocks your driveway, traps your car, and makes you question every relocation decision you've ever made. If you've never experienced lake effect snow, Buffalo will introduce you real fast. Now, employment. The job market is okay, not terrible, not booming, just okay. There's opportunity in healthcare, education, and local government, but outside of those areas? You may find yourself scrolling job boards and asking, is this really it? Economic revitalization is happening, slowly, in certain neighborhoods, but others are still stuck in a cycle of disinvestment, aging buildings, and stagnant wages. It's not as extreme as some cities on this list, but it's definitely not low. Some neighborhoods feel peaceful and tight-knit, while others remind you that poverty and lack of opportunity always come with challenges. Buffalo is a patchwork. One block is charming and walkable. The next looks like time forgot about it. Infrastructure? Let's just say the city tries. But between harsh winters, historic buildings, and limited investment, you will see your fair share of potholes, uneven sidewalks, and roads that feel like they're testing your car's suspension system for fun. And don't get me started on property taxes. New York will always find a way to remind you that nothing is truly free. But here's the beautiful twist. Buffalo has heart, real heart, a massive sense of community. People shovel each other's driveways, check on neighbors during storms, and gather for festivals, food, sports, and local pride. The culture is deep, the food scene is underrated, and the city is slowly, very slowly, modernizing. But if you're relocating in 2026 because it's cheap, remember this. Buffalo is affordable for a reason. High poverty, slow economic growth, brutal weather, and neighborhoods that are still waiting for their comeback moment. Move here if you love resilience, tight communities, and don't mind shoveling snow at 5 a.m. just to get to work. If not, maybe keep scrolling. 7. Albuquerque, New Mexico. Ah, Albuquerque, the land of stunning sunsets, spicy green chili, and affordability that makes budget-minded movers perk up like, wait, this looks promising. But hold on. Before you grab your suitcase and start dreaming of desert living in 2026, let's talk about the side of Albuquerque the tourism brochures politely skip. First, the numbers. Albuquerque's poverty rate sits at about 17 to 19%, but some neighborhoods jump way higher. The median household income hovers around $56,000, which sounds decent, until you factor in the rising cost of essentials, limited job growth, and a local economy that feels like it's running on 3 wheels and a prayer. Jobs exist, especially in education, government, and healthcare. But outside of those, let's just say you'll need determination and maybe a plan B crime? Oh yes, we need to talk. Albuquerque consistently ranks in the top tier of U.S. cities for property crime, auto theft, and general, why is this happening to me, moments. You'll find neighborhoods that are peaceful, artsy, and community-oriented, right next to areas where your car needs a security system, a camera, and maybe a blessing from your pastor. It's a city where beauty and chaos coexist on the same block. Then there's the housing. Yes, it's relatively affordable. That part is true. But don't let the price tags fool you. Many properties are older, need updates, or come with maintenance issues that can drain your wallet if you're not careful. And while rent is lower than the national average, wages aren't keeping up. So affordability isn't always as affordable as it looks on paper. The infrastructure? Let's describe it as trying its best. Sidewalks appear sometimes. Public transit is hit or miss. Roads can feel like they're testing your suspension every 2 miles. And certain parts of the city look like they're still waiting for revitalization projects that were announced back when flip phones were popular. But here's the thing. Albuquerque is beautiful. Truly. The mountains, the desert landscape, the sunsets that look photoshopped, the food, the culture, the art, the indigenous heritage, the festivals. It's a city with soul. A city with creativity. A city where people care deeply about their communities, even when the challenges feel bigger than the budget. Still, if you're thinking about relocating here just because the housing prices look cute, remember this. Affordability comes with context. And in Albuquerque, that context includes crime rates, slow job growth, uneven neighborhoods, aging infrastructure, and a daily balance between charm and struggle. So yes, move to Albuquerque if you're ready for desert life, culture, and unfiltered beauty mixed with real-world challenges. But if you expected an easy paradise with low prices and zero problems, yeah, you might want to keep scrolling on the relocation list. 8. Flint, Michigan. Flint, Michigan. The city that became a national headline for all the wrong reasons. If you're relocating in 2026 strictly based on cheap housing alone, Flint will absolutely catch your eye, then make you stop and say, wait, why is it this cheap? Spoiler alert, there are reasons, many reasons. Let's start with the economy. Flint's poverty rate sits at a staggering 35 to 38%, one of the highest in the entire United States. The median household income barely reaches $33,000, and for many families, every dollar has to stretch, flip, and do acrobatics just to keep the lights on. Jobs, limited. Manufacturing collapse, devastating. Recovery, slow, uneven, and still happening in pockets rather than citywide. Then there's the elephant in the room, the water crisis. Yes, improvements have been made. Yes, new pipes have been installed. But the long-term impact, public trust, health concerns, property value damage, still lingers in the air like a storm cloud no one can fully outrun. Even if the water situation is better than years ago, the reputation remains, and so does the caution from potential residents. Crime, high, very high. Flint has struggled for decades with violent crime and property crime rates that consistently rank among the worst in the nation. Some neighborhoods feel stable and tight-knit. Others feel abandoned, hollowed out, or in constant survival mode. It's a city of extremes, where one block is full of families and pride, and the next looks like a snapshot from an urban collapse documentary. Infrastructure and housing? Well, let's just say you'll find some of the cheapest homes in America here. Prices so low they make your jaw drop. But cheap doesn't always mean deal. Many homes are old, vacant, damaged, or require major repairs. The roads, cracked, public services, stretched thin, investment, slowly returning but nowhere near where it needs to be. And yet, Flint has heart. More heart than almost any city on this list. The people are resilient, community-oriented, and determined to rebuild what decades of economic decline tore apart. There's art, culture, activism, and a deep pride that survives even when the odds look impossible. Flint isn't a city without hope. It's a city fighting for a new chapter. But let's be honest. If you're planning to move here in 2026, affordability can't be the only thing you consider. Cheap housing comes with context. High poverty, limited opportunity, safety concerns, and infrastructure challenges that will definitely test your patience and your wallet. So yes, Flint might be a new start if you're tough, resourceful, and ready for a city that demands resilience. But if you're expecting smooth living with bargain prices, Flint will teach you fast that every discount has a story behind it. I'm Camden, New Jersey. Camden, New Jersey, the city right across the river from Philadelphia that offers affordable housing, stunning skyline views, and some of the toughest living conditions in the entire United States. If you're relocating in 2026 strictly for cheap rent, Camden will absolutely catch your attention, whisper sweet budget-friendly promises, and then immediately remind you why the prices are low. Let's talk numbers first. Camden's poverty rate sits at a jaw-dropping 36–40%, making it one of the poorest cities in America. The median household income hovers around $32,000, $35,000, and for many families, every month is a tightrope walk between bills, groceries, and basic survival. Opportunities? Limited. Economic mobility? Even more limited. Camden has been fighting decades of industrial collapse, job flight, and economic abandonment, and those scars show. Crime? Oh yes. Camden has long battled a reputation as one of the nation's most dangerous cities. Things have improved in recent years, but let's not sugarcoat it. Violent crime and property crime remain significantly higher than the national average. There are safe pockets, strong community groups, and deeply rooted neighborhoods. But there are also blocks where residents take safety into their own hands because calling for help sometimes feels like waiting for a miracle. Housing is where Camden tricks people. The prices are low, very low, especially for a city sitting right next to a major metro hub like Philadelphia. But many homes are old, outdated, or in areas that need massive investment. You might find a cheap home that turns out to be a full demolition project disguised as a fixer-upper. Infrastructure? Rough. Roads that feel like obstacle courses. Public services stretched thinner than plastic wrap. Abandoned lots. Buildings that look like they've been waiting for redevelopment since the early 2000s. Camden has potential, but it also has decades of deferred maintenance breathing down its neck. And yet, here's the twist. Camden is not a city without pride. The community is strong. The people are resilient. There are revitalization efforts happening around the waterfront. New development slowly creeping inward, and nonprofits working tirelessly to improve schools, streets, and safety. The city has heart, real heart, and you'll feel it the moment you talk to locals. But let's be real. If you're relocating here simply because the rent is cheap, Camden will introduce you to the kind of life lessons you didn't ask for. High crime, high poverty, limited opportunity, and an environment still clawing its way toward recovery. So yes, move to Camden if you're ready for grit, realness, and a community that refuses to give up. But if you thought affordable meant easy, Camden will show you very quickly that every low price comes with context. And in this case, a lot of context. 10. Youngstown, Ohio. Youngstown, the poster child of America's industrial collapse. If you're relocating in 2026 and looking for a city with housing prices so low they look like typos, welcome to the land of, "Are you sure this isn't a scam?" Real estate listings here will make your jaw drop, and then the reality of why they're so cheap will make it drop even further. Let's start with the numbers, because Youngstown's statistics read like a warning label. The poverty rate sits at a staggering 35 to 38%, putting it among the poorest cities in the entire country. The median household income? Around $33,000, and that's the median, meaning half the residents live on even less. Jobs? Limited. Economic growth? Slow. For decades, the city has been trying to recover from the loss of steel mill jobs that once powered the entire region. Some areas are rebuilding, but many are still frozen in time. The housing market is the biggest trap. Sure, you can buy a house for $40,000 or $30,000 or even $10,000 in some cases. But many of these homes are abandoned, gutted, decaying, or sit in neighborhoods with little investment, few jobs, and even fewer resources. Cheap does not mean easy. In Youngstown, cheap often means demolition-level repairs, outdated electrical systems, leaking pipes, structural issues, and surprises that will empty your savings faster than rent in a big city. Crime? High. Very high. Violent crime and property crime rates consistently sit above the national average, especially in areas suffering from long-term poverty. Some neighborhoods feel deserted, quiet in a way that doesn't feel peaceful, but hollow. Other areas are strong, community-driven, and fighting to survive. But the disparities between blocks can be extreme. Infrastructure is another story. Think roads that need prayer, not patchwork. Empty lots, abandoned buildings, and services that struggle to keep up with the area's needs. Public transportation is minimal, and walking isn't always realistic depending on the neighborhood. Youngstown is a city that was built for 170,000 people, but now has fewer than 60,000. That means wide streets, endless vacant land, and entire sections that feel forgotten. And yet, as always, here comes the emotional plot twist. Youngstown has incredible people, blue-collar pride, community strength, grassroots efforts trying to rebuild neighborhoods with almost no funding, a growing arts scene downtown, a university that brings energy back into the city, and locals who treat each other like family, even when the city itself feels like it's still recovering from the economic trauma of the 1980s. But let's be honest, if you're moving here just because the houses are cheap, you need to look beyond the price tag. Youngstown is not a quick fix. It's not a budget paradise. It's a city with deep challenges: high poverty, high crime, limited jobs, and infrastructure worn down by decades of decline. Move here if you want to be part of a rebuilding story, have the patience of a saint, and don't mind navigating the realities of a struggling economy. But if you thought relocating in 2026 would be as simple as cheap house equals easy life, Youngstown will teach you fast that affordability always comes with a context, and this context is heavy. So there you have it, 10 cities where affordability meets adversity. Sure, the rent might be cheap and the housing might look tempting, but every low price comes with a story behind it. If your goal is simply to save money and embrace a bit of chaos, these cities might give you exactly that. But if you're chasing stability, safety, and long-term opportunity, you might want to think twice before relocating. Cheap doesn't always mean cheerful, and sometimes the hidden costs hit harder than the rent ever could. Before you move anywhere in 2026, do your research, protect your future, and make decisions that actually elevate your quality of life. If you want more breakdowns like this, where to move, where to avoid, and where real opportunity exists, make sure you're subscribed. Your next city might be one video away.